You a DMC spy, boy? DMZ, the king of crass humor and the absurd. There's going to be a lot of juxtaposition going on right now. I do wonder if anyone who isn't already into this style of music or humor would check out DMC. It's not prudish about the kinds of content it's about from the moment it begins. This is the opening after all. Forsey uses panel size and limited animation for the series in a really specific way. It's the closest thing to like a literal panel by panel adaptation, but I feel like it's more interesting than the standard approach that you'd see because of its OVA backdrop. It's got a lot more time to figure out how it's going to approach stuff. And, you know, sometimes it will just change the approach of animation completely to fit the best tone to tell the joke it's showing. Each episode doesn't feel like it needs to stick to like a strict 20-minute length either, which is another benefit of the OVA. Now, it's funny that they got this director, who's very well known for his adaptation of Mushishi, as well as the soon-to-be highly anticipated version of Uzumaki. Why would you offer the Mushishi director this project? But it was actually because of another person that this all happened. When Nagahama went to the meeting with Forsey, there was a certain director there, Shinichiro Watanabe. It was the first time I've ever met the man. Truthfully speaking, this job actually came to me, he said. I thought he was the perfect fit. All the music he incorporates in his shows, I thought it was great. He told the studio, I know a man who'll do the job better than me. Which is, what a Chad move, quite frankly, from Watanabe. You worked at Masaru-san. You understand gag comedy. I think you'll be the perfect fit for Detroit Metal City. The gags hit more than they don't, for sure, but relying on shock isn't going to be a lasting format, although each episode being short enough means that they never quite overstay their welcome. Even in my least favourite ep, there's some great bits. It's fast and constantly firing at you in poor taste. We really didn't want to have the actual dialogue available for the people working on it, especially with all the women in the room. It was a very strange workplace, but it was fun. It seems like the fun was contagious, because there is definitely something quite amusing about the absurd situations Krauser gets into. The mangaka and the people creating the series knew a lot about the history of metal, you can tell that, even with the name of the series coming from the Kiss song Detroit Rock City. And of course the Corpse Paint is reminiscent of that same band, but also later bands which evolved from that. Lyrically, groups like Cannibal Corpse do that kind of shock humour, which isn't the only reference. They sort of splinter all kinds of historical Easter eggs throughout. Say for example the manager situation, or how the final tour of a metal icon Jack is in Japan. The core comes from the contrast between the double life of its main character, who's supposed to be like the sweetest dude pretending to be the spawn of Satan. Some of the best moments do actually come from the wholesome interjections. However, the main character's kind of a total creep with very thin skin. And that does make it harder for me to empathize with him at times. The anime actually tones down it by removing the first issue, which to be fair, was probably more of a pilot, and it's very out of character. It's just straight up too bluntly mean-spirited to be funny. Soichi is like strangely possessive with this girl that he's not actually going out with, but is like a childhood friend with, and it's not something that's going to get me laughing, like when he starts stalking them in later issues, and it does get much worse in the manga later. Now, you could say that like, the manga, if I was going to give this sort of counterpoint, I guess, the manga kind of gives the impression that Krauser is almost like a possession towards the young lad, like something that happens to him without his control. How much that's true, I didn't actually get to the end. I don't really know. But even outside of this sort of like the possible supernatural element, it's just not really uncommon for like lead like men in the metal industry to be kind of struggling with the performative aspect of their personas and the expectations of the fans, or to be shitty people in general. Matson. You could also call it a sign of the times, because DMC came out in like the period of just like blunt, edgy humor, like at its complete height. And it's in Young Animals, which is the sort of same place that published things like Berserk. It's an edgy publisher. There's no limit to what could be displayed, and how many times you can say no word jokes. But on the same thing, I'm not going to pretend this is a show that you couldn't make today. That would be ridiculous. it's mostly pretty silly and tame outside of like the implications. And what helps balance out the show is that there are definitely genuine moments between characters that heighten events, albeit DMC does sometimes do this just to bring out a really spiteful joke. And sometimes they land, I'll give it that much. There is still like a genuine energy given to those moments though, and that it's kind of helpful because just overall there is a melancholy that fills throughout like the outlook that these characters have in the world. There's sort of just things like set in stone that you cannot get past. You know, like the main character wants to make like the sweet pop music, but no one in that industry gives a shit about his work. And even though if he hates his dedicated following, he's very good at doing like the underground rocks. With some characters, I definitely feel like there could have been a lot more fleshing out, especially with his love interest, who's just completely a blank slate. Like I know very little about this character at all, besides that it's that she only really exists to put the main dude into awkward situations at her expense in terms of the comedy's format. And I don't know, maybe that itself is a critique about how vapid everything is for the main character in terms of that, like he desires his childhood friend to be his girlfriend, to play into his trendy cafe life, to make these sort of pop songs for adverts. Like he's kind of just a complete poser. And I do admire the director for taking less conventional approach to this whole thing. As he said, well, it worked for me before, so I'll do it again. That won't lead to a further understanding of that direction or of the product. He's always willing to try something new for each of his shows. And also he really went far to highlight the material and bring it to its most absurd in a way that's a lot of the times like really pushes the envelope on the source material. DMC knows it's showing the ludicrous side of metal, with the character's legacy only growing through its rumors and silly misadventures. And it's funny to see how like out of control the situation becomes when the person that becomes the death metal king, the emperor of death metal, has never even kissed a woman before. You know, horror and laughter fall into the same lines here. DMC kind of feels like it was made to be adapted, considering the music backdrop, and the music is very effective at what it does. Like that they went out of their way to create a whole death metal album, and it sounds the part, and like when it needs to be, it's animated incredibly well. It really shows the dedication of a team. And that gives the OVA a severe advantage over other sort of mediums, which I can really admire here that it isn't a pale imitation or anything, but goes the full route. And it's a pretty bite-sized piece of material. Each of them, you know, just over 10 minutes for about 12 episodes that cover the first 25 chapters, moving around certain bits to give it a better, grander finale. And it's a satisfying end to the whole affair. I feel like you can get everything you want out of DMC without even ever going to the manga, if you wanted to. That's not to say there isn't like more highlights in the manga, but it certainly becomes more mean-spirited as it goes along. So take that with a pinch of salt. Like if you're in it for the style and the metal, give it a go. Keep on rocking in the free world, eh? Hello there, we have Kat over here. And you have just watched a 4-Sember or a 4C month video. Now there's supposed to be a bunch of them. We're supposed to be releasing them every day after all. And at the end of the month we should have a full, expanded, revised version for everyone to see. If you want to keep checking them out, there should be a playlist probably on the screen, I'm guessing. And to thank everyone who has helped support me during this period of time, it's been a little bit hectic to try and get these videos out. I need to thank all my patrons who get exclusive content, I got a lot of stuff earlier, etc, etc. Jay, Steven's mum, Takayuki Suzuki, Alex Moriarty, Paul, Subsofa, I hope I'm saying that right, and Chunks. Among all these other people, I've had to expand... We're in the editing dock right now, but I've had to expand the screen because I knew there was more space I needed to get all the names on there, so I've changed the angle slightly. Yeah, thanks everyone for their support. Check out tomorrow for the next video.